All right. Well, welcome, class of 2024-2025 families. Thank you so much for joining us tonight as we continue to explore the road ahead for our high school students. As I said, my name is Jen Beavers. This is my first year as a school counselor. I've been in the district for 22 years, previously as a high school English teacher. So in many ways, I'm learning alongside you as well. So we are going to cover what may feel like a lot of information tonight. However, as Kelly mentioned, we are going to post this recording on our counseling website, and so you can refer back to it as need be. But just to go over some of the topics that we'll be addressing in this particular session. So we'll address questions such as what kind of classes do I need to take next year? Am I on track to graduate? What is the difference between high school graduation requirements and the A through G requirements? How do I ensure that I have a well-balanced schedule? And how do I go about requesting the courses I want? And then at the end of our session, we will save time for a Q&A as well. So just know that that will be coming at the end. So just to get started, on the left side of your screen, we've listed the 7 school counselors that are here at Cal High. We have our the alphabet that we are each in charge of next to our names. That can shift ever so slightly each year depending on enrollment. But this is how it broke out this year with the 7 of us. And then we are so fortunate to have additional support for our students at Cal High. So we have Patty Mullins, who is a support counselor. She helps students with social emotional wellness. We have Miss Goldenberg, who coordinates our wellness center. She also is very instrumental in helping students with their social emotional needs. And we are also super fortunate to have Mrs. Nichols, who is the advisor for our College and Career Center. Miss Nichols has been really instrumental this year in helping kids with college exploration, job potential, work permits, internships, and all that good stuff. So we have a robust and excellent team of counselors to support our students here at Cal High. And just briefly, for the school counselors, we are available to students before and after school, during lunch or brunch. So students can always drop in and see us, or they can shoot us an email and ask for a specific, request a specific appointment with us. So we are going to start, and I will tell you that we will take a deeper dive into course registration and requirements and all that a little bit later on in the presentation. But we wanted to just start by showing you a sample of what a potential 10th grade schedule could look like. All 10th graders have to take an English class, and they have to take a world history class. So you see the student on the left is signed up for English 10 and world history. And then the remaining classes are based on what the students' goals are and interests are as they kind of move through their high school career. On the right side, the student has signed up for English 10, and they've chosen AP European history. So both of these history classes do meet the A through G requirements. And this particular student has, again, taken classes to move them towards their goals. They've also signed up for their second year of PE. So they're taking a team sports class, because students need two years of PE to graduate from high school. So this is just a sample of what a 10th grade schedule could look like depending on the student's goals. Much like the 10th grade now, we have 11th grade, and again, the English class and the history class are required for every student. What's nice about the 11th grade is that there are a lot more options open for students in terms of different types of classes, as well as electives. So again, you can just run your eyes over. These are two different students that are both on track to graduate from high school, but they have different interests and therefore they're taking different classes. So this is what a student's transcript looks like. And students have to earn a minimum of 220 credits in order to graduate from high school. So you can access the transcript in your Infinite Campus portal under Documents. Okay, so that's where you'll find the transcript or your transcript. And just as kind of a note that to be on track for graduation, if you're currently a 9th grader, you should have 30 credits. You should have earned 30 credits. And for our current 10th graders, it would be 90 credits. If you haven't earned those credits, there is summer school that will be offered this summer. The district hasn't come out with all the details for summer school 2022. But as soon as they do, we will get that information out to you. And that will be an opportunity for students who need to recover credits from past semesters. They will have an opportunity to do that this summer. And we will talk to our students individually in our one-on-one meetings with them this spring and let them know about the courses that they may need to remediate. And then Kelly, I think it's passing it on to you.
It is in a virtual webinar if I at least don't start talking once without unmuting myself. So let's hope that was my one for the night. So yes, getting into a little bit of overall requirements. This graphic is available on our website. Like I said, you're also going to have access to all of these slides. But really with a lot of these different requirements, you and your students don't need to be the experts on this. You should have a basic understanding of what you need to take. But these one-on-one meetings with the counselors that you will have, that's going to really be a place to get your questions answered from people who do this all day for years of their life. So kind of going through it, I'm not going to read it too much because I know you can do that yourself. I'll just highlight some of the similarities and differences. For the graduation requirements are on the left side, the A through G requirements are on the right. For anyone who may not know, A through G requirements are the college entrance requirements for our California public schools. So those are our Cal States or our CSUs and our University of California or UCs, so those institutions. So if students are taking and passing their social studies classes at Cal High, they're well on their way and set for the A through G. The biggest difference, and this applies to all of these classes, is that while a D- earns you your credits for graduation, it needs to be a C- or better for A through G. So that's kind of the one big distinction on when you might need to remediate some of the classes that you've taken that work for graduation, but it would not be A through G eligible. English, your students are lucky enough to get 4 years with our English department. The students at Cal High have lots and lots of options. In terms of their English classes, I know I saw a question about global studies. So that one is kind of that, and then American studies for 10th and 11th grades respectively are kind of what I call buddy classes, that if you're taking one, you're taking the other, and yes, they're both definitely A through G approved. In fact, the vast majority of the classes that students take in high school would be. It's maybe some electives or for special education classes, those might not be. And then PE as well, but PE and health, as you can see at the bottom here, are not A through G requirements anyway, which is why they're not A through G approved. Going on to math. So for high school, you need to do algebra and one other math class. For A through G requirements, students are going to need to do up through algebra 2, and then really a 4th year of math is recommended. One question we get a lot of the times is, what if I took math in middle school? So if your student started doing algebra in maybe 8th grade, they're in geometry as a 9th grader. If they did algebra 2 next year, that is their 3rd year of math, and they would have met the requirement, even though they took that algebra in middle school. In terms of math classes for your student next year, your students should be working with, they're going to get information from their math teachers about what math class they'll be recommended for 22-23. All right, so you can see we line up pretty well on the science requirement. The only difference is that for A through G, a 3rd year of science is recommended as well. And that could be any science from any category or an interdisciplinary category as well. So this part is where it gets a little bit trickier depending on what your goals are. So for high school graduation, students need to do 2 of the 3 of the areas E, F, and G, or sorry, E and F. So we have world language, fine art, and then there's also that applied art category, which are career and technical education classes. So for high school graduation purposes only, students need to do 1 year of in any 2 out of those 3 categories. So that could be world language and applied art, fine art and applied art. You can mix and match those however you like. For A through G requirements, on the other hand, they need to have 2 years of the same language. So doing French 1 and Mandarin 1 would not count. It needs to be through level 2 of the same language, but 3 years are recommended. And for that world language category, the same thing works with math, where if your student started in middle school, that would get them up through the second level if they did like Spanish 2 as a freshman in high school. That would meet that requirement. For fine art, a student needs to take 1 full year of fine art, which could be any of our visual or performing arts. So things like ceramics, photography, band, drama, sculpture, anything in those categories would count for your fine art, but it is required for college. That applied art could count for your high school requirements, could count for a college prep elective, but it's not a requirement for the college piece of it. And then electives. This is where some people get a little confused because it is confusing looking at your transcript. So like Ms. Beavers was just showing you, you can see your credits remaining on that, and that's really a much better judge of how your student is doing than that number of electives. Some students will graduate perfectly fine without ever taking a class that actually counts as electives, because anything you earn in other subjects past the minimum requirement will count. So when you're doing that 2nd year of world language, when you're doing that 3rd year of science, 4th year of math, all of those things will count for your elective credits for graduation. And just one of those has to be A through G approved. But again, I tell students not to really worry about that because they take Gov Econ. So that could count as their A through G approved elective if they haven't met anything else, which I will say is very, very rare. Typically, our students have quite a few A through G approved electives by the time they're a senior in high school applying to college. All right, the last pieces are for high school graduation only, but I always say, yes, it's for high school graduation only, but high school graduation is a requirement for college. So in that way, yeah, you do need to do those to be able to apply to college. So that's 20 credits of PE. You would have earned, freshmen right now are finishing up their first 10 in PE 9, and then students have a choice on how to earn their second 10. So in that student Jen showed earlier, they were taking team sports, which is one of our many, many PE classes. So you can either choose to mix and match those. So some students might want to do team sports twice. Some might say, I can't decide between yoga and net sports, so I'll do a semester of each, which is allowed for PE. Pretty much all of our other classes, you're spoken for the year, but those PE classes you can mix and match because they're semester long. The last one is health, which students are taking as a freshman right now. Or if you're currently a sophomore, you did that last year. So I know that is a lot of information dense stuff. So I just wanted to take a peek in the Q&A to see if there's anything that would be worth addressing right now. So any course outside, yes. So anytime you're exceeding the minimum requirement, that class could count as your G elective. It doesn't necessarily need to say G. And to get sports credit, athletic credit, that would happen at the end of your season as long as you're eligible to play and you're on that roster. For freshmen doing PE, you can't earn PE credit, athletic credit as a freshman, so you would need to participate in a sport later on in your high school career. Okay, so some other things to note, like I said, I just went over a ton of requirements. Your students, I think they've all gotten their course registration sheets by now. If not, we're wrapping those up tomorrow on Friday. So they got a sheet with a bunch of information on the front, and then the back of it shows all the courses that they're able to take for that grade level they're entering. So if they want to know about any of those classes, they can go to our course catalog, and that is linked here, but you can also Google SRV USD course catalog and you'll be able to find that PDF. And it gives really in-depth descriptions of our classes, as well as it'll tell you what the prerequisites are and what A through G area it counts for. So all that really useful information is there. And then I beat myself to the punch with the electives thing. So yes, just stressing that anytime you exceed a subject area, you are earning elective credit. And this is a great thing to talk to your counselor one-on-one. It's not something that your student necessarily needs to have a deep understanding of. We're happy to explain that to them looking at their individual transcript. Okay, so getting into college requirements a little more. We have so many amazing options for after high school for students that want to explore their different paths in community college or trade school or join the military or workforce. Really, we're spending more time talking about college requirements is because there are certain things you have to do and classes you have to take to be able to do that. Whereas those other options, you get a little more freedom in high school and still be able to pursue that. So like I said earlier, A through G requirements are for our California public schools. That being said, out-of-state and private universities may have slightly different requirements. Sometimes we'll see that a third year of science is required. Sometimes we'll see that they want, a specific, they specifically say they want physics or things like that related to math. But for the most part, our students are eligible to apply to many out-of-state and private schools with our A through G classes. It tends to be a little more rigorous than other universities, right? Like some other colleges, they might not have that C or better rule. They might say, if you earn credit for it, that works for us. That's why we just stressed to our students that you really need to do research because you don't want to not have an option to apply because you missed out on a requirement. But typically, if you are doing your A through G requirements, you're going to be set for the vast majority of colleges that you're interested in. The other thing, the other thing about college requirements is there is no right number of AP and honors classes. We have students get into college without ever taking AP and honors classes. So really that's a very personal choice and what works for that individual student. Some of your ninth graders, they may not be ready for an AP or honors class yet. They're still adjusting to high school. Maybe they're not interested in the AP or honors classes that they could take as a sophomore, and that's totally okay. So trying to look and see the big picture, really, if you're doing that with the hope of using that to improve your college applications, they're wanting to see authentic students who are guided by their interests, who have really rich activities, who get involved in their communities. So I would kind of let those things drive decisions more than how many AP classes do I need to take. And a hot topic, the bell schedule. We know there's been quite a few questions about this that we've gotten. Per California law, no instruction can start before 8:30, so which means there will be no A period next year. That's not to say students can't take 7 classes because we are working on a bell schedule that has a 7th period at the end of the school day. So for students taking a standard 6-period day, you're going to get out around 2:30, 2:45, so actually a little bit earlier than we have this year. Students taking a 7th period, looking at more like 3:30, 3:45, so not that much later in the grand scheme of things. And athletes will be able to take that 7th period. The sports are going to start after that. And again, I just want to stress, this is a statewide rule. So it's not just Cal High, it's not just San Ramon, it's students all across the state. So yes, they'll be able to do that. 11th graders, they could have 5 classes if they're on track for graduation with that, which typically looks like ending this year with around 120 credits. and 10th grade students do have to have 6 classes. So you could choose between 1 to 6 classes, 1 to 5 classes, 1 to 7 classes, or that's the periods of the day. So 1st through 6th period, 1st through 5th period, only for juniors, or the extended school day with a 7th period. Okay, so we're gonna get into some of the things that you could consider as an option, but are definitely not required of students. So before we do that, I have on the screen some words directly copy pasted from a class of 2021 graduate. She wrote this in her senior exit survey. I'm not going to read it all because you can do that. I just really want to highlight that she's talking about that there's nothing wrong with needing extra support, whether that's in courses or with your mental health. She talked about she knows the pandemic caused extra struggle, but she really wants us to stress that it's okay to reach out for help and that you're no different than anyone from needing help or redoing a course. And that really, this student said that she wishes she knew this earlier and she regrets not reaching out sooner. So she knows, like I know, that saying these things, you need to hear it enough time before you really start believing it. So I really hope that you can help us help your students understand that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be doing something a little different than what other people are doing, and to really listen to yourself and your gut of what's right for you as a student. Okay, so with that said, talking about some of the things, just been speaking from the heart and behind in my papers over here. The 7th period option. So we know that this might be tempting for some people. It might sound really overwhelming for other people, and that's all okay. You do not ever have to take a 7th period class to be able to meet all of your graduation and college eligibility requirements. Typically, the students that do this, it's most geared towards students who are part of a program or students who are behind in credits, right? Those would be the situations. So if you're someone who has dedicated yourself to our wind ensemble and you want to be able to keep doing that, maybe this is the way that you can do that and also pursue your other interests. So it makes sense in that situation. So 11th graders, you don't have to have any specific requirements to be able to request this. And this is for rising 11th graders, so current 10th graders. For rising 10th graders, my current 9th graders, you can only request a 7th class if you're part of a co-curricular program. And I've listed the examples of those down there. So it's really focused on students in the arts, or students in our journalism classes, students in our engineering pathway, or that work on our newspaper or yearbook or an AVID. So those are kind of the examples of who can have a 7th period class and what situations it works for. And I do see some 7th period classes related in the Q&A, so let's see if I can get to those. Yeah, I'm seeing a question about if sports will start after 7th period. What do they do if they don't have a 7th period, right? So they'd be done after 6th period. That is something we're definitely going to need to address as a campus. We don't have necessarily the specifics of how that'll work yet. They would be welcome to leave and then come back to school. I just don't know what other options we'll have yet, but obviously this is going to not be a unique situation. So it'll be something that we'll talk about as a campus and probably as a district as a whole. Okay. Non-district courses. This is again labeled as optional. You do not need to do this, right? This is referring to students who want to take things outside of Cal High, outside of San Ramon Valley. Maybe they're wanting to take a college class at DVC. Maybe there's an online class they're looking into. Really what we stress about this is it's on the student and the family to do research about it. There's literally hundreds of these courses out there, so we can't be the expert on all of them. We are well-versed in what we have to offer within San Ramon Valley. So the district website is a great resource with places to start on this, as well as where you're going to turn in the intent form if this is something you'd like to do. So my things to think about with non-district courses. We really recommend taking things through Cal High because we can speak better to what your experience is going to be like and that it's going to effectively prepare you for the next class. With our math and science class, or sorry, I mean, kind of science, but I was speaking about math and foreign language. We get a lot of feedback from the teachers that students who do non-district courses over the summer tend to not be as prepared as their peers who took classes at Cal High during the school year prior, which makes so much sense because you're taking a year's worth of content and squishing it down into 6 to 8 weeks. So those classes that are really focused on practice, right? Like math, like Spanish, French, Mandarin, it's going to be hard to replicate a whole year of learning in that short time. So we do see that students sometimes aren't as successful. That doesn't mean all students, that doesn't mean some people can't have had a good experience doing that. That's just the general trend that we see. The other thing that we see is that students can be kind of burnt out if they come back after summer having still done school. Summer is such an important time for them to refresh themselves, to enjoy being a teenager, to explore interests, maybe get a job, spend time with friends. That way they're ready to go for the next school year. So anywho, those are just some things to think about with these non-district courses. Again, we want to stress that you don't have to do this. We have plenty of students get into amazing colleges and have amazing high school experiences without ever doing this. If you're choosing to do it, the only things you need to give to the district, give to our registrar, are classes that are needed for high school graduation. So that's what needs to go on the transcript. You could report things to a college that you didn't put on your high school transcript. The other piece is if you're taking a course for advancement, so say doing geometry over the summer to move into Algebra 2, both semesters of that geometry would need to be completed before we return to school in the fall, because otherwise you haven't finished the class and you need to meet that prerequisite before you can move on to the next class. Oh, I will say the best reason I have to take a non-district course is if you're interested in something that we don't have to offer at Cal High. So maybe your student would love to learn about astronomy, or maybe their art, they want to do a film appreciation class, certain things that we just don't have. So that would be a great reason to do a non-district course. The other one that I see is if you have so many things that you're involved with at Cal High that you don't have space in your schedule for something. So those would be the two examples that I see where this would make a lot of sense. But really, like I've talked about before, we just don't want your students to feel overloaded. It impacts them negatively. We've definitely seen that. Okay. AP and honors classes. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not a requirement to do these. Challenging yourself appropriately looks different for everybody. Some people might be ready for 1 or 2 of these. Some people might not be ready for another year, or they might not get to these in their high school career, and that is absolutely okay. If you do decide you'd like to do these, we don't recommend doing more than 2. And a Google form for our AP contract will be required, and they'll get that during our one-on-one meeting because we want to talk to them about their choices, why they're making their decisions, and then we'll say, okay, go talk to your parent and confirm with us that you know what you're getting into, that it is going to be more work. The benefit of doing these for people who may not know is you could get a weighted GPA. You could get potential college credit from your AP class, but really the biggest benefit and the reason you should be considering this is you love the subject. You're so interested in it. You want to learn more about it. You're ready for the challenge. You're ready for the rigor. You want that deep learning in that particular content area. I think Jen could probably back me up in saying that we see students get into a little trouble when they're in an AP class and they just wanted to have an AP class. I'm like, so how is AP Euro going? They're like, I don't like history. This is really hard. I'm like, well, yeah, because you're trying to walk through quicksand here. It's not something that flows for you. So by all means, I think you're capable of doing this, but I think you'd have more success in a class where you're interested and that aligns with your goals and yeah, what you're wanting to do, what you're good at. Okay, so I'm going to pass it back to Jen. She's going to talk a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of course registration. I don't know if I said earlier, but it's worth repeating. Your student should have got that course selection sheet this week. If they didn't get it, or maybe they lost it, which we know is bound to happen, they are available on our counseling website. So thanks, Jen.
All right, so the portal window is going to open on March 1st and close on March 10th. So this is not something to stress about. If by chance there's a mistake made, then that is definitely something that we can fix after the 10th. So the directions are the same as they were last year, and the instructions are available on Schoology. I can't stress enough the importance of sitting down together and looking over the course choices that your student has made, looking at the course catalog together. I've visited that document many times myself, just because sometimes a title sounds a little ambiguous. So what exactly, is the psychology of happiness? What is that class all about? So definitely sit down, have a conversation about the choices and what your schedule's looking like. And just make sure that you choose alternate choices for electives and upper level science and social studies classes. So if you know you're going to take fine art, and you sign up for Art 1 and then decide, I'd rather do photo, then, just make sure that you have one, I guess what I'm saying is, if you are open to doing either photo or Art 1, put one as your first choice and the other as your second choice, okay? But if you do need to make a change after the window has closed, you just need to contact your counselor directly and let them know of the change that you want made. And we can do that up until June 4th. So after June 4th, we will not be taking any requests for changes, okay? In terms of the counselor meetings, we are going to meet one-on-one with our students this spring. So for our current 9th graders, the week of March 28th, we will be meeting one-on-one, and for our current 10th graders, it'll be the week of April 11th, so right when we get back from spring break. So this is a great time to bring any questions you have about your course selection, about your transcripts, about summer school. The more prepared you are for this meeting, I think the more information we can get to you. So again, after the meeting, we can absolutely make changes if we need to in Infinite Campus. But again, we will, after June 4th, we will be gone for summer break, much like all of you. So after June 4th, no change requests will be accepted. And then lastly, we want you to make sure that when you're thinking about choosing your classes for next year, that you do so with great purpose and intention. So you want to make sure, as you have heard reiterated throughout the session tonight, to make sure you're balancing your academics with the rest of the things you have going on outside of Cal High. You need to make time for family and friends and extracurricular activities, and even just downtime for you, alone time. Super, super important. Again, review that course catalog, know what some of the prerequisites may be before you sign up for a class. And also just be aware that if you get into a class next year that all of a sudden you realize, like, I'm in over my head, I don't want to take this, just know that there may not be room to move you into a different class. So that's why we're saying be very mindful of the choices that you're making. Excuse me. You can fill out the 4-year plan, which is available. Sorry, Kelly, can you take over?
Oh no, cough attack. Yes. So 4-year plan is available on the counseling website. Again, you're going to get these slides. I'll probably have them posted by the end of the day tomorrow. I know the senior one from last night's already up there, so I'll do my best for that. But if not, first thing on Monday morning. Yes, so that's available on the counseling website. We also have a whole page about course selection, how the process works, different forms you might need. And there's a link to that right on the homepage. It's like the first thing you see when you get on the counseling website. So we do have that 4-year plan resource. If you're someone who thinks more long-term and you don't just want to look at what you're taking next year, you could fill out that full 4-year plan to kind of see what the next year, 2 years, 3 years of your high school career would look like, depending on what grade your student's in. So that is on the counseling website. As Ms. Beavers had talked about, your alternates matter. So we do our very best to get everybody their first choice schedule, but we have almost 3,000 students. So sometimes that doesn't always work out. So having an alternate choice, that way it's not one of us just picking randomly based on what's available. That's going to get you your schedule that you're most happy with. So please do that. Have that ready. All right. So I'm going to go over a few more things, some further reading, and then we're going to get into the part where I know you've been waiting for, the question and answer section. I've been seeing the number of questions going up, and I know our lovely moderators have been saving those for us. So thank you for hanging in there. So just really, if you're taking anything away from tonight, these are kind of what we'd want you to know, that you do not have to be perfect to be able to get into college. We talk about during our Mythbusters, College Mythbusters, which I think is available on our website. You can go take a peek at that. We really reject the idea of a good college. Colleges are good for everyone for different reasons. So yeah, there are going to be some colleges out there that you pretty much have to get straight A's to get into, but those aren't the only good colleges. There are plenty of good colleges that allow you to grow during high school and, you know, explore your activities, and you don't have to be perfect to get into them. And again, that extra applies to advancing during the summer. Colleges really actually do want to see you exploring other things. Who are you outside of the classroom? When colleges are admitting you to their campus, they're doing just that. They're not admitting you to their classes, they are, but they're also wanting a really robust and diverse and dynamic community. They want people who have other interests. They want people who get involved with things. They want people who show that they care about their peers. So you don't need to do anything over the summer. AP classes, the best reason to do those is because you like the subject. I really can't stress that enough. Sleep and rest, just as important as studying. I don't know if just as important is quite the right word. They're both necessary. How about we put it that way? You only get to do high school once, so I can't tell you how many times during senior interviews, maybe you do or don't know this happens. I'm talking to just Jen right now, so I can't see if people are nodding or whatnot, but we do senior interviews with our students who need letters of recommendation, and we ask them to reflect upon their high school experience. And I can't tell you how many times these really, really incredible students express to me that they wish they made more time for the high school part of things, the hanging out with friends on the weekend, the going to dances, the getting involved in clubs. So really emphasizing how important that piece of things too. And then of course, I'm sure the parents in the room can get on board with this, trying to limit your time on social media and really encourage connection, whether that be with family or friends. So these are what we'd want you to take away tonight. We'll do our one-on-one meetings. We'll talk about all the classes and stuff and get you settled with that, and you'll leave feeling confident in what you're doing next year. But this is really the important piece. So for the adults in the room, these are two novels that we can't recommend highly enough. The Gift of Failure by Jessica Leahy, and then How to Raise an Adult by Julie Lithcott-Hames. Julie actually, I'm acting like we're on a first name basis, but she actually just did a presentation for SRV USD. She was a dean at Stanford, so really great resource. She's actually coming up with another book called How to Be an Adult, so that probably is going to be an amazing gift for a high school graduate. So if you want further reading to talk about these things, we can't recommend these two enough. So the part that I know I've been anxiously waiting for as I see that Q&A box go, we have time. It's 6:40, so if you're not interested in hearing the Q&A, you can go enjoy the rest of your evening, maybe make some dinner, have a bowl of ice cream for me, but if you want to hang out and listen and ask questions, we will be here.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I have been tracking all of our questions here, and I want to start by asking if you can describe a little bit more about athletic PE. We've had many questions about how students earn athletic PE, how many credits students get by playing a Cal High sport, and so I think some info on that would be good.
Yes, awesome. So athletic PE, like I said, it has to be after your freshman year. So anytime after that, if you play a sport for Cal High, it has to be a sport for Cal High. If you do one season of a sport, at the end of your season, you turn in a form to our athletic director and you get 10 credits, which is equivalent to 1 year's worth of PE credit. So it would finish off your PE requirement if you passed as a freshman.
Thank you very much. The next question a few people asked about, and y'all did touch on this, but I just want to make sure it's abundantly clear.
Yeah.
Are counselors going to be meeting with every student for their course registration, or is it only as an as needed type of basis?
It is with every student. We know the past couple years, there have been some obvious challenges with the pandemic, but this year we are meeting with every student. I guess the only situation I could envision there needing to be like a special circumstance is if your student is absent that day. We need to schedule makeup. So if we're having trouble tracking them down, please send them our way because we'd love to meet with them. But we do go into classes and we each have a table. We work through our student roster and we do talk to each and every 9th through 11th grader.
Great. Also a lot of questions just about lots of different types of classes of what does this elective count as and what do you learn in that class? So can you kind of speak generally about if families have questions or students have questions about what a particular class covers or what A through G category it counts for, where they can find that information?
Yeah, so the best place to get that is our course catalog, which I think I touched on in the presentation. It is linked in the slides that will be posted, but you can also Google SRV USD. You can see every class offered in the district though, so you'll want to make sure that it either says all for the schools it's offered at, or specifically it says CHS, which is Cal High. So you'll be able to see where it's offered, you'll be able to see what you learned about, what grade it recommends in having the class, if there's a prerequisite, all that information in the course catalog.
Thank you. Can you touch on the difference between honors and AP classes?
Yeah, so honors and AP, they're both going to get a weighted grade. The AP class is, so AP stands for advanced placement. That's a designation from the College Board. So the same people that do the SAT are in charge of AP. And the biggest difference, other than the fact that there's a curriculum being provided for these AP classes, is that at the end, students have a chance to take an exam. And if you get a 3, 4, or 5 on that exam, the university you attend may offer you credit. They typically do, but some colleges have certain rules about that, so you can't make a blanket statement about AP credit.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see here. Quite a few questions about just kind of what does A through G stand for? And kind of what are those requirements? I know you did go over them, but
yeah, A through G doesn't actually stand for anything. A through G refers to the different subject areas. So like social science is A, English is B, right? So there's A through G. That's how they got that name. So there's 7 different areas and a total of 15 classes you have to take with a C- or better to be eligible for CSU and UC.
Okay, thank you. That honestly does cover a lot of what the questions were about. There were quite a few questions about non-district courses and how to turn those transcripts in and when they are due. And what we kind of generally say, because there are so many individual issues with these types of things, is to always check the district website, which clearly lays out the deadlines, the procedures, and all of those things. And then also when your student is going to be meeting with his or her counselor in the next few weeks, bring those questions, because a lot of them just are individual based on an individual student's situation. So it's kind of hard to answer in a general way tonight.
I love when a student brings me like a sheet of printer paper with questions on it. I promise I'll pretend not to notice that it's in mom or dad's handwriting, and we'll get those questions answered.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of questions coming in now. Another question about, oh, this is a good one about counseling. Yes, sometimes the counseling alphabets change from year to year, and we, of course, would prefer that didn't happen. Just depend, you never know with enrollment, you know, one year we might have a sudden big rush of students with the last name of L, and then our balance gets all kind of out of whack. So to make sure that our alphabets are even and we can, serve all of our students equally. Sometimes those letters do have to change a little bit, but we do try to keep it as stable as we can.
Yeah, it's not our favorite thing to change either. We love to stay with our same students. So just please have faith in us that we try to avoid that whenever possible.
I see a question here about parents meeting with counselors, and that's a great question because I'm sure a lot of parents would like to do that. Currently in this moment, because as you can imagine, we're about to meet with all of our students except for our seniors. We are too busy in this moment to have parent meetings about course registration and course plans. What we'd love to see you do is sit down with your student, write down all the questions you have together and send those questions in when your student meets with us in person at school. Of course, we're happy to meet with parents about issues as they come up. In this moment about course registration, we really do just have time to meet with students. But if after that time more questions come up and you're left with more to ask, then please send your student's counselor an email. That is, we welcome those questions.
Yeah, obviously for other things, if you have social emotional concerns or other things are happening, that does not apply. We can't accommodate parent meetings to talk about course registration on top of getting to spend time with your kids.
Yeah. And unfortunately, those meetings too are really just for students because they're in the school day. So we can't accommodate parents joining us for those one-on-one meetings at this time. Okay, I'm scrolling through the questions, and as I'm seeing a lot of these questions are individual for different student needs. And so what I really would like to invite you to do is to, again, write them down and bring them to your counselor individually. So because a lot of these things are kind of too specific for a general audience. There is no set amount of time that each student has with the counselor. As you can imagine, it is a very busy 3 or 4 weeks for us, but it's not a production line. We do sit down and they have as much time as they need. And we have our open doors to them always, before school, after school, during lunch, brunch, breaks, all the things. And they can always come back if they come up with more questions.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a year during course selection that I haven't lost my voice, but it's one of my favorite times of year. We get to see so many kids.
Oh, can you talk a little bit more about the AP contract and the time management activity?
Yeah, so that'll be available. We're going to start giving students the link to complete that when we start meeting with them one-on-one, just because we want to actually talk to the student and have a conversation about it versus hey, look this over and make a big decision. But it will be a Google form. It will be linked on our website. They'll go through it and it's just some general guidelines of things that we want to make sure that they've considered before making an agreement to join one of these classes, because it is a year-long commitment. So they go ahead and do that. And within it, the students that are required to do that time management sheet are the ones that are not following our recommendation of fewer than 2 AP or honors classes. So we want them to sit down and do a sheet to show us how, and show themselves, to be perfectly honest, how they're going to fit this rigorous, demanding classes into their schedule with their other commitments. And they'll turn that in that same Google form. It's all one website that they'll complete and submit to their counselor.
Okay, I'm looking through and I feel like we really did get the bulk of the questions asked here.
Oh, I saw one thing related to college admissions that I think we get pretty frequently that I hadn't addressed. So for Cal High, there is not a requirement to do volunteer hours. Some clubs within Cal High might have volunteer hours, and you'll need to work with submitting your hours directly to those organizations. So maybe like Key Club or NHS. And then in terms of colleges, yeah, they certainly like to see students getting involved. There's not a requirement to do that, but if that's something a student is passionate about, that's fantastic. And they would just write about that experience in their application. So they're not ever going to be turning their volunteer hours into anyone in the counseling department.
A question just came up about preparing for the SAT, and I don't know that we really touch much on the SAT in this presentation, but could you give a little general?
We didn't, because we still have some time before we get there. Really, even our current juniors are in the beginning phases of that, and I want this to be as anxiety reducing as possible. And I don't know if talking about the requirement years down the road is helping that. That all being said, as of now, the UC is currently test blind, meaning they are not going to be considering test scores, and they've committed to that, I think, through 2025. So, and then they're going to be reevaluating, but that means they're not considering test scores. I was just sitting with a student today and I said, look, even if you got the perfect SAT score, that still wouldn't make a difference in your UC application. If you got the worst possible SAT score, which I don't know what that is, same thing. They're not going to be considering it. CSU, sorry, that was for UC. CSU, they're still making their determination. The board of trustees, I think, is voting next month. So we'll know more about that then. But basically, just sit tight, focus on building your skills, building your math skills, building your reading and writing skills. And that's how to best prepare at this point, because we don't exactly know what that's going to look like for your graduating classes.
Okay, I think that covers it. A few more people have asked about the course catalog. I always just Google SRV USD course catalog. It is the fastest way to get there. We've got it linked on our website. It's linked all over the place, but Google is the fastest avenue to it, honestly. SRV USD course catalog for all your questions about what classes cover, what are prereq recommendations for classes. A few people just asked about AP classes. And again, all those things are answered in the course catalog.
We have a special Cal High one too from our teachers for recommendations for AP and honors classes. You're probably sick of hearing it, but it's on our counseling website. If you go to the course selection page on there, it says like recommendations for AP and honors, and that's where you can find that information. Oh, it says you have, I'll fix that. Thanks for letting us know. I'll make sure that we adjust that link so you can view it.
Yeah, it's probably wanting you to be in your student's account, but we can change that. Okay, I think that about wraps up the Q&A.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.